Including the U.S. military's attack on 3 of Iran's nuclear sites over the weekend. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celestia Sherman. We'll also talk with Kris Larson, president and CEO of Downtown Houston Plus, who will give us an update on some new economic developments downtown.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also speak with marine scientist Dr. James Gibeaut, who will break down the ecological role of that floating brown seaweed in Galveston.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, your questions, and concerns. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
All that and more right here on Hello Houston, right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. The National Security Council is scheduled to convene with President Trump in 1 hour. They will discuss U.S. involvement in the war between Israel and Iran. American forces bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites this past weekend. NPR's Greg Myrie explains how Iran could respond.
Iran or one of its proxies could fire a missile or a drone at U.S. troops in the region. There are around 40,000 U.S. forces at multiple bases. They are on high alert and well aware that Iran has carried out these kind of attacks in the past. Iran could also try to disrupt oil shipping in the Gulf. Iran's parliament on Sunday approved closing the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of the world's oil goes through the strait every day.
Approval to close the strait is seen as largely symbolic and requires further approval from Iran's top security council. Iran and Israel are continuing to trade attacks today. President Trump is set to depart to the NATO summit in the Netherlands tomorrow. His trip abroad to meet with European allies comes after he ordered the strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
The president will spend just over a day at The Hague meeting with European allies. The main focus of this year's summit is getting NATO nations to increase their defense spending to 5% of total GDP. It's a huge bump from the current mandate of 2% GDP spending on defense, but the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia's threats of continued force have pushed European nations to try and reconfigure their own defense capabilities and rely less on the United States. President Trump has been critical of NATO for years, saying the U.S. spends too much money on supporting Europe. He said last week that NATO countries should increase to the 5% number, but he doesn't think the United States should have to. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
A federal judge in Tennessee is ordering the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the man wrongly deported and then returned to the U.S. to face criminal charges. Mariana Bacallao with member station WPLN reports from Nashville.
The judge has ordered that Abrego Garcia be released as he awaits trial on human smuggling charges. But the 29-year-old who was wrongly deported from Maryland to El Salvador in March may go into ICE custody instead, officials say. In her ruling, the judge writes that the government failed to prove that Abrego Garcia was a flight risk. Prosecutors say that Abrego Garcia smuggled people without legal status for the MS-13 gang. The defense says that the charges are to distract from the lack of due process in Abrego Garcia's case. The conditions of his release will be discussed at a hearing scheduled for Wednesday. For NPR News, I'm Mariana Bacallao in Nashville.
This is NPR News from Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Governor Greg Abbott has vetoed a bill to ban the sales of virtually all products containing THC, the psychoactive compound in cannabis. News 88.7's government reporter Andrew Schneider says Abbott is calling a special session of the legislature in part to deal with the problems posed by the lack of regulation for THC consumables.
Governor Abbott waited until shortly before the midnight deadline to veto Senate Bill 3. He did not immediately issue an explanation for the veto, but he did announce a special session that will begin July 21st. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the lead advocate for the ban, responded on social media by saying that Abbott had left the families who had seen their loved ones' lives destroyed by such products feeling abandoned. Abbott's veto leaves the state's multi-billion-dollar hemp industry intact for now. Patrick and others demanded the ban in large part because they alleged the industry was targeting minors. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
Authorities in Galveston are reporting the drowning of a 55-year-old Houston man. News 88.7's Matt Harrop describes what happened.
The man was boogie boarding with his wife Sunday morning when he went under. Multiple agencies responded to the emergency. Lifeguards found him a short time after this happened and attempted CPR, but were not able to revive him. A red flag warning was in effect at the time because of rough waves and strong currents. There's been at least 4 drownings at Galveston Beach this year.
That's News 88.7's Matt Harrop reporting. And the Rockets pulled off a huge trade over the weekend, sending Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, and a host of draft picks to the Phoenix Suns for Kevin Durant. The move resets the roster for the Rockets, who had a disappointing first-round loss in the NBA playoffs. Durant was at a fan event in New York when the news broke out about the trade.
You're headed to Houston. How does that sound?
Durant turns 37 in September. It's currently 87 degrees. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Monday.
Hello, Monday. Hello, Medicare.
Frank,
right.
over the weekend, I guess our big headline of the day is over the weekend, Frank crossed over the bridge into senior citizen territory.
That doesn't sound right.
Into senior citizen. You are now 65.
I am 65 and still alive.
How does it feel, Frankie?
Vertical. As long as I'm vertical, I'm good.
You're doing good. Happy birthday, by the way, Frank.
Day,
Thank you. You know, I shared that June 22nd with my late mom. And so it was always really, you knew Pat.
Yeah.
And it was always really special that day.
Yeah.
So I miss her, of course, but, she's up there watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she made it to 65, so did I.
Well, good. Now let's just hope you keep going. We're not done with you yet.
That's right.
As we're not done with you, remember, you can watch us over on our YouTube channel. Just look for the Houston Public Media channel, or you know what, just type in Hello Houston. We pop right up in YouTube. And you can watch along, and you can see what 65 looks like today.
65.
Looks pretty good, I'd say.
And alive.
You know what?
What?
If you can, keep your weight off and your hair on. That's the key to looking young.
I keep gaining weight and losing hair.
There are doctors for everything, Ernie.
Y'all look great.
Thank you for that.
Look great, both of you.
Frank, you were in New York.
I was in New York.
First of all, how was the weather in New York?
It was beautiful for us. Yeah. You know, they're going to hit 99 on Wednesday. I mean, this heat wave over the eastern United States is going to affect them, too.
99 is bad here in Houston. In Manhattan.
In the concrete jungle. Oh.
It's oppressive.
Yeah, but it was great for us.
Yeah.
We had a few sprinkles now and then, but no, it was great.
So then, did you bring good weather back with you for us?
You know, I think we've got 91, 92, feeling like 100 all week long with these afternoon showers. But look, my pool, I haven't had to fill it all the time, and the plants aren't dying. So these afternoon showers are really kind of nice.
They are nice. I enjoy them. I've said that over and over, and they're great for a garden.
Yes.
Our gardener's garden again.
Okay,
They
real
are
quick.
great.
Real quick, I've got our first tropical disturbance in the Atlantic. It's 70% chance of development into a tropical storm, and it's not going to affect anyone because it's way out there. But it's the first, and if it does develop, its name is Andrea. What's interesting about Andrea is that was the 2007 name that replaced Allison from 2001 when we had bad Allison that dropped all that 42 inches of rain in spots. So Andrea was the replacement for Allison, but it's way out there. Anyway.
Well, I have 2 Andreas in my life. We call them Andrea, and they're both wild.
Yeah.
So.
This one is not going to be.
Question for you. We are getting these afternoon showers, But with the heat we're getting, does that dry out the ground? Do these afternoon showers keep the ground more pliant so if a storm does come through, there's absorption?
Well, it's a better cycle to get wet and then dry it out and wet and dry it out, because otherwise you get dry, hot, dry, hot, hotter, drier, hotter, drier. That's what leads to drought. So we're not in a drought, and it doesn't look like we have one coming anytime soon.
And does it lead to flooding too?
Well, the flooding, now that things have calmed down and got more just afternoon showers and not these big storms, we're in better shape.
Okay, so if you think they're a little annoyance when we get these afternoon showers, thank your lucky stars. It keeps us healthier if more water comes our way, right?
Correct.
See, I'm learning from Frank every single day. We also got to spend some time at Comic Palooza. You missed our live show from Comic Palooza, Frank.
Yeah. No, I don't know anything
Frank
about
doesn't
Comic
feel
Palooza.
any bad about
I saw y'all's picture. It looked fun.
Yeah, it was great. I, over the weekend, watched Back to the Future.
Finally, for all you comic book fans.
It was
and
very fun,
that have
very
been bothered by
Spielberg.
this. She finally saw it.
I watched it.
Your take is, give us your minute review.
My minute review is, I think it's a great movie. Absolutely. It had all the elements to it.
Well, and we had talked about Michael J. Fox being the second choice.
Right.
But can you imagine it with anyone else?
No.
He was so good in that movie.
McFly, was
perfect.
So, do you go on to one of the other films you haven't seen now, or do you go to Back to the Future 2?
I'm going to go to Back to the Future 2.
That's
and I'm going to continue from there. I also watched Snow White, which earlier, got slammed earlier in the year. I thought it was very good. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
It was fine. There was a prince. They did kiss. They did fall in love. So there you
felt
have
like
it.
a lot of
I even
brouhaha.
think, yes, I do think there was a lot more hype around it. She never burned her bra. She was fine.
I probably saw the Timothy Chalamet movie with the Bob Dylan biopic.
Oh, what'd you think?
I liked it. It was good. I would kind of skip through it, fast forward a little bit. And I saw the Liza Minnelli documentary, which was
I still
great.
need to see that. But you know what? We
really
do
good.
need to get into our topics of the day. We've got a really full show for us today. I do want to go back and talk about the Liza doc. But until then, let's go over to Celeste. And it was a very shocking and busy weekend when it came to news.
It truly was. We continue to monitor the situation in Iran. The U.S. military carried out an attack against Iran's nuclear program early on Sunday, Iran Standard Time, named Operation Midnight Hammer. The mission involved 7 B-2 Spirit bombers based out of Missouri, using 14 of the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs known as massive ordnance penetrators, along with a separate barrage of Tomahawk missiles fired from a U.S. submarine. The 3 sites hit by the U.S. bombs were Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz, contained nuclear material in the form of uranium enriched to different levels. Per the International Atomic Energy Agency, there were no signs of off-site radiation or contamination in the wake of the U.S. attacks. The U.S. and Israel attacks signal a dramatic escalation in the years-long effort by both nations to prevent Tehran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Top Democrat in the House, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, said in a statement, Donald Trump promised to bring peace to the Middle East. He has failed to deliver on that promise. The risk of war has now dramatically increased, and I pray for the safety of our troops in the region who have been put in harm's way. Now is the time to join us right here on Hello Houston. What are your thoughts on President Trump's actions? You can call 713-440-8870.
So,
Frank?
Well, I think I'm torn like most Americans. I don't like guns or bombs. I don't like war. None of us do. At the same time, we've had a very long history with Iran and of terrorism, and this has escalated. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. I don't want them to have that. And I have to trust that between Israel and the United States, they had come to the conclusion that it was imminent, and it could have been a few weeks, a few months, maybe 6 months, but it was they were on the brink of development, and they felt like they had to do something to make sure that didn't happen. And so that was a solution. I do think that this massive ordnance penetrator is an acronym is MOP. Like, we're going to mop it clean.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what they did. Now, did they get what they were after?
That's the big question that continues to hang out there. A little later in the show, Congressman Randee Weber is going to be here with us, and he'll be sharing his point of view and understanding. Earlier today, we had the Democratic response on Houston Matters, and so Randee Weber's a Republican.
What do y'all think?
Well, multiple lawmakers within the Houston area have already been responding to Saturday night's bombing attacks by the U.S. military. Locally, we are seeing what is happening across the country, where Republicans are largely backing President Trump's move, while many Democrats seem to be skeptical. Right here locally, Senator John Cornyn called the decision courageous and correct, and what leadership on the world stage looks like. Democrats are accusing the president of sidestepping the Constitution by directing the military to attack Iran without seeking congressional approval first. So, regardless, I think that whichever side you're on, the U.S. now is involved and seems very directly involved in another Middle East conflict.
Well, we have to be on the side of our troops. First and foremost, whether you want to be in this or not, you're an American and you're in it.
Right.
So you have to support our troops because they truly are the ones, like the USS Cole that was attacked, and they're within range of bombs that Iran could drop or missiles that they could fire. There are U.S. troops within range.
Right. The thing we have to watch right now is to see what Iran's response is going to be and how they're going to approach it. Are they going to let it be? It was a singular strike on nuclear facilities. They got the message. They're going to worry about their own and what moves forward with it and going back to trying to negotiate some sort of peace, or are they going to retaliate? And that's where I think everyone's on kind of, I don't want to say pins and needles, but they're kind of weighing what's going to happen.
I don't like the term sleeper cells.
Yes.
And I've heard that. We're just going to have some of our sleeper cells within the United States become active.
Right.
Yeah. That scares the heck out of everybody.
And you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. We have Seth from the Heights on this topic on the line. Welcome to Hello Houston, Seth. What is your comment or question?
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call. The first thing I want to say is I think it's safe to say a lot of us know an Iranian or an Iranian-American colleague or doctor or engineer, we have Iranian descent astronauts. Iranians broadly, we're peace-loving people. I'm an Iranian-American myself. We want the same lifestyle, the freedoms, the values that we are enjoying here in the United States. And the fact of the matter is the people in Iran are being held effectively hostage by a terrorist regime of extremists who are hell-bent on spreading extremist ideologies while the people just want to live a normal life. Mm-hmm. And so all this conversation that's going on and all the predictions about what is that regime of terrorists are going to do, really the true solution for Iran and the region is for the United States and for the world to hear the Iranian people, listen to their wishes, listen to their dreams and aspirations. Iranian people and the culture and history is ancient. It's always been based on the love for nature and knowledge and for peace and prosperity of all people. Cyrus the Great freed the enslaved Jews. There are so much contributions that Iranians have made to humanity, and all they want is to be a part of the global experience of life, to be a part of the world, to be a part of the global economy. So really the best solution going forward is support the people. Listen to their desires for freedom. You have
a great point, Seth. I have friends that are Iranian. There's 1 to 2 million Iranians in the United States. They're Americans. But I want to know, what's your opinion, Seth? Do you think that the United States Trump administration took the right move here?
Well, it's really hard to say because we're dealing with a regime that is nefarious. It is an ideological extremist regime, and there is no doubt about that. But fundamentally, depending on what perspective you take, you can look at it from a perspective of international law and international order, and you can argue that's illegal. But you can also take the perspective of the government and the people of Israel, possibly, and world security, and say, well, they're enriching uranium to levels that are simply not used for civilian purposes, right? So you can. I'm someone who sees both sides of the argument. But I always say diplomacy should prevail. The Iranian regime was at the negotiating table, but it is also a regime that you can't really negotiate with because they kill their own people. They're oppressors. They're dictators. So if we want a real solution, we really should support the Iranian people.
Seth, Thank you for those thoughts and for sharing with us. 713-440-8870. I don't mean to cut you off, but we want to get to a couple other calls. And so Conrad from Humble is on the line. Conrad?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you for opening the line for this. I guess my question, just for the panel, is looking at the couple decades that there's been hints of Iran manufacturing a nuclear weapons, and no one's been able to find anything. I understand that, but why now is there a supreme interest in uncovering this and dismantling them, especially after a year and a half of Israel oppressing and killing innocent civilians in Palestine?
Well,
and no one's coming to that defense.
For one thing, Israel didn't have the bunker busters, and we do.
Right.
So to get on their side of this, then they had to have us. As far as why now, I think the answer that I've heard is that Iran was very close to developing a full nuclear weapon.
Which seems to be a point of some, I don't want to say contention, but discussion about where were they really in the process. But also simply having that uranium enriched to the level it was, if not in a warhead of a nuclear bomb. You were talking about dirty bombs, the smaller ones that can be out there. At this level, that can be being used.
And Conrad, we will have a Republican representative, Randee Weber of Galveston, Friendswood area, who will be joining us right at the top of the noon hour right here on Hello Houston. We will be sure to ask these questions as well as in regarding to timing and why that the president felt that this was the right timing. We did have Democratic Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher on Houston Matters early this morning, and you can head to our website, houstonpublicmedia.org, to hear that.
713-440-8870. Amani from Meyerland is on the line. Amani, what are your thoughts?
Hi, good morning. Love you guys and love your show. As an Iranian American, I just wanted to clarify a few things, and I try to be as quick as possible. Number one, we have to always separate the Islamic Republic from the Iranian people, because 81% of Iranians do not like their regime and have been fighting for 2 decades at least to get rid of them. That's number one. Number two, change in Iran is going to only happen through a regime change. And regime change has to be done by Iranian people. The way Iran is being attacked could start that regime change, but it has to be finished by Iranian people, only by Iranian people. Number three is the use of the term terrorism. Iranian government has been very active in terrorist activities since the Iranian Revolution, which ironically, U.S. had a part in it to turn the Shah's regime, who was pro-West, to an Islamic Republic. But also we have to remember that some of these so-called democracies, such as Israel, also act and have been doing a lot of terrorism around the world, especially in Gaza right now. So, Iranian, Islamic Republic is a terrorist regime, but they are not exclusively the only ones.
Mani, quickly, just do you believe that there is the strength of the Iranian people to make regime change? Is there support for it? Could it happen?
It could happen, but it would not happen if they are running away from Tehran to find refuge in, outskirts of Tehran or by the Caspian Sea or anywhere else they can find refuge. So there's got to be a time and place where people will have some, and hopefully by then the regime is weakened enough that change could happen. It's going to take some time, and this regime is still very powerful, and they still can kill and torture people the way they did before.
Amani, thank you very much for those thoughts.
You know, I mentioned before, in Nazi Germany, 1939, 80 million Germans, only 10% were Nazis. Mm-hmm. Only 10%. But if you have the power, you have the power, and it's very hard to topple that power. So when he says 81% are against the regime, and you say, well, can't 81% fix it? No, not necessarily.
Yeah. 713-440-8870. Alvin is on the line from the 3rd Ward. Alvin, what's on your mind?
All right. How you doing, guys? Great show.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Alvin.
Okay, so what I wanted to say, a couple of things. North Korea has nuclear weapons. And North Korea, you can say, is somewhat of an ideological monstrosity. And we, for communism, and we actually don't attack them, and the world knows that they don't attack North Korea because they have a nuclear weapon. So this is one thing that we're actually proving to smaller countries, is that if you get a nuclear weapon, you won't be messed with. Lastly, as it relates to regime change in Iran, one of the things that we have to be careful about is the unintended consequences, which we always make this mistake over and over again. The reason Osama bin Laden rose up in Saudi Arabia is that he saw that there was Western influence all over essentially their land. And so we have a situation where we've got bases all over the Middle East. We've got 50,000 people dead in Gaza. And when those pictures start coming out, it's going to be shocking for those of you who've already seen it. We've got a situation where that same government has now started this attack on Iran. Now, listen to this. We actually had a nuclear deal. We had a nuclear deal that was actually canceled because of this president, simply because of ego. So we have to actually start taking responsibility for the momentum that actually got us here. And we attacked the regime that was actually actively negotiating with us. Who will trust us in the future?
Alvin,
all right, guys.
Thank you very much for your thoughts on that. 713-440-8870. Let's go to August, who is calling us. What's on your mind?
Hi, guys. I've actually been on the show before. I came to talk to you guys about the farm a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Long-time listener. Love hearing you guys talk about everything that's going on. As a young person, as someone who is, of course, invested in the well-being of people of all nations, I think that it's been pretty clear from the start that the conflict going on in Palestine has not been a endpoint issue. This feels very much like a continuation of Western countries continuing to stake their claim in the Middle East, and the Palestinian civilians having to pay the consequences of these actions is horrible. And I know that now we're going to see Iranian casualties as well. We've seen like the Lebanese casualties too. It's disappointing, unsurprising from our current administration, but I hope that this is a moment of reflection for us all where we can kind of come together and understand that nuclear power and waging war on these like huge, unbelievable scales are only possible because of how much money America puts into its military. You know, we have the largest military by far funding-wise, and even if you cut it in half, we would still have more than China, which is the next military down. So I would really love to see in future presidencies that we move our money that we use towards global peacemaking, end quotes, towards education and furthering our domestic industries as we have in the past.
August, I'm gonna have to stop you right there because of time,
totally
but
fine.
I do appreciate your calling and sharing your point of view with us. We're always interested in what all of our listeners have to say. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. We'll have more on this topic coming up in the next hour when we have Representative Randee Weber, U.S. Congressional Representative Randee Weber, with us to talk about what's going on in Washington with the Texas interests in the center of it all. Just another quick little story that's getting a lot of attention. We didn't have time to really get into it. According to reports from ESPN, the Phoenix Suns and the Houston Rockets are making a deal that will send 15-time NBA All-Star Kevin Durant to Houston. Woohoo! Keep listening to our airwaves to learn more about what's going on that story.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Kris Larson, the president and CEO of Downtown Houston Plus, about some new developments happening right here in the middle of our city. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
The mineral trona, not often heard of, but widely used, and almost all of it is in Wyoming.
90% of the world's economically mineable trona is here on top of today.
I'm Kai Risdal. Tariffs and the global trona supply next time on Marketplace.
You can listen to Marketplace coming up tonight at 6:30.
On the next Fresh Air, journalist Carter Sherman joins us to talk about her new book, The Second Coming: Sex and the Next Generation's Fight Over Its Future. She explores why Gen Z is having less sex, how the internet, politics, and miseducation are shaping intimacy, and what it all means for the future. Join us.
Fresh Air. It's on tonight at 8 p.m.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, Ken Burns chronicles the lives of Theodore, Franklin, and Eleanor Roosevelt, 3 members of the most prominent and influential family in American politics. Tonight at 9 on TV8 or stream on the PBS app.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
Support comes from Pearland, Texas, a community with a variety of living options, from new construction, mature neighborhoods, and urban living, designed for any lifestyle. More at pearlandedc.com/inspiration. Pearland, inspiration lives here. Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Since the start of the year, Houston has led the nation in office return rates among the top 10 metro areas, with workers steadily filling buildings again. Texas Tower, one of downtown's newest high-rises that launched in the thick of the pandemic, is now nearly 100% leased. Meanwhile, legacy towers are showing new life. 3 major energy firms have recommitted to nearly 1 million square feet at Allen Center, a revitalized complex that saw $50 million in upgrades just a few years ago. And to tell us more is Kris Larson, the president and CEO of Downtown Houston Plus. Kris, good morning and welcome to Hello Houston.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here.
Sure. So there's a lot to talk about, but I know Frank first wants to know.
Well, I haven't heard much about Downtown Houston Plus, your organization.
Sure.
Tell me, how long has that been around, and what is the goal?
Yeah, so we created Downtown Houston Plus 2 years ago, and that's because we are actually 3 organizations in one. So since 1983, Central Houston has been a leadership organization advancing the well-being of downtown. And then in 95, we created the Houston Downtown Management District, and in 98, the Downtown Redevelopment Authority, which is TERS number 3. So we manage all 3 of those organizations underneath one umbrella, which is Downtown Houston Plus. And we created that because a lot of folks kind of get lost when we start talking about management districts and TERSs. At the end of the day, what they want to know is that there is a leadership organization working to benefit downtown.
And if you want to join the conversation and you have questions about Houston's downtown, you can call us at 713-440-8870.
Are you surprised by the return to office work? We heard so much when the pandemic started lifting and everyone's like, people have found a new way to work. They don't want to go into offices. What are we going to do with all these buildings? Are you surprised that it has gone back to what it was before?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. And the reason for that is, as humans, we need one another, right? And we need opportunities to collaborate, to explore ideas together, to challenge one another, right? To push each other. And there's just not a perfect replacement for that in a virtual environment. And so I think that there was, new technology and obviously, of course, the pandemic itself sort of motivated people to start to explore working remote. But at the end of the day, it's not a perfect substitute. Certain jobs can be performed in a remote capacity, and others require that people are in place with one another.
So did you folks do something specifically to encourage that return in our marketplace? We lead the way almost in the nation in doing it. What did we do to make it more desirable?
So a couple of things. In downtown Houston, really comes down to the quality of the workplace environment. So people, when you're competing with people's couches, you've got to make
Nice
it comfortable,
way to put it,
right?
yeah.
People are looking for amenities. They're looking for things that they cannot find at home, right? And so property owners, business owners, and others, they recognize that the competition here is people's houses, right? So we've got to make the workplace something that people want to come to. And so there's a lot of investment in space that occurred through the pandemic and onward. People learning from one another and what works, and then just sort of parroting a lot of those principles. Some of the other pieces that we've really focused on is events and creating fun reasons for people to want to be back in downtown, things that they can't find in their own neighborhoods. And so that's a big part of it as well. It's just recognizing that at the end of the day, space competes for people, and we've got to create well-appointed and interesting spaces.
Well, let's get a little more into that, Chris. Yeah. I spoke at the Texas Tower about hurricanes last few weeks back. And while I'm waiting to go, there was a coffee machine. It's a $40,000 coffee machine. I've never seen
like the one you have at home.
It is amazing, and there were. I mean, that's part of it. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of thing, and then the I would say the rec room. I don't know it had pool tables. I mean, there really is a center for entertainment in these buildings. When you say encourage people to come back, I want to go.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, and gyms and all kinds of things, right? So I mean, the workplace has evolved, and it creates a lot of human comfort, and that's a big part of it. I mean, Texas Tower, which you mentioned, talk about a high-performing asset, right?
Beautiful.
I mean, it's our trophy office product, and it's the fact that it's already 99% leased up just a couple of years after being delivered. This post-pandemic, I mean, that speaks to the fact that people want quality. We talk about it as a flight to quality, and that's a part of that migration that's happening within the office sector.
So from a business perspective, we're seeing Houston, you can go down and we have our tunnels and, there's a lot of life. Yeah. But what about apartments and living downtown Houston? Because it still seems pretty quiet on the weekends, and Houston isn't really known for its downtown nightlife.
Yeah, so working on building a downtown neighborhood has been a strategy that we began about 15 years ago. And this is responding at the time to the fact that downtown Houston had the lowest residential density of any relevant city in the state of Texas. And so this has been a challenge for us because a lot of what you're talking about, that vibrancy, that nightlife, I mean, that is people who are there oftentimes by choice and, versus being there for work. Right. And so being downtown by choice is a major initiative. We've been working on growing the residential population for the better part of the last decade and a half. Now have over 11,000 downtown residents, but we still have some work to do in there.
But Chris, why do you think culturally Houstonians don't necessarily want to live downtown?
Yeah, so it's not as much culture as it is a function of land use controls, right? Which is fancy way to say zoning.
Okay.
And so in most U.S. cities, the areas where you can build density, where you can build skyscrapers and that kind of housing can only happen in a place like downtown. In Houston, those types of projects happen everywhere. And so in economics, we talk about that as being a substitute, right? So if you want that style of sort of urban living, you've got options in Houston, which is what has slowed our progress of building that kind of residential density. The other flip side of that coin is because of our success and legacy as a center for business, it means the land is valued at if you could build another Texas Tower, right? And so land is more expensive in downtown, which means that we are fighting a steeper demand curve and competition with area where land is cheaper because you can still build by right. Basically, you can build density.
To speak a little of your values and how you do what you do there, I do want to mention that you are proud underwriters of our station, and we appreciate that too. I want to let people know that Downtown Houston Plus does underwrite on our station. But to go back to what you were talking about making things more attractive, and Frank was talking about it too, it takes me back to like the tech industry back in California and in these complexes where there were games and beanbag chairs and all that. But it seemed like the industry moved away from that feeling. Did you folks have to find the balance between what is industry and work and what is play, and is that play kind of put there to surround industry and not to involve in it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's to be there as surrounding industry, and of course there's exceptions to that rule. But at the end of the day, it's place that matters the most to us. And so what we're interested in is how does downtown provide those amenities, those experiences that complement the workday, right? But it doesn't necessarily need to be in the building itself. And ideally for us, it's happening all throughout really the urban fabric of downtown, because that's where you create those opportunities for everyone to experience those types of moments. So the beanbag chair isn't reserved purely for the coder, right? It's an opportunity for all Houstonians to come and enjoy.
If anybody has a question for you, 713-440-8870. So we were talking about the beanbag chairs, the $40,000 coffee machine, the pool tables, and all of that. Are there also like the errands being like the laundry, the dry cleaning, the pharmacy, the banking? Are there things like that in these office buildings that people can tend to and not have to go run errands after work because it's all right there?
Yeah, so what's unique about downtown Houston is that a lot of those types of retail or services are located within our tunnel network. And the tunnel network,
12 miles, I think.
Yeah, 6.4, but who's counting?
I double everything in life.
But Chris, you were talking. I want to get back to this because I know there's a lot I want to cover.
Sure.
Main Street Promenade, World Cup. We have a lot going on. So when you're talking about attracting people downtown to Houston, talk to us about the Main Street Promenade and what's happening, and is that going to really attract people to want to live downtown?
Yeah. So let's first talk about. Most people, when they close their eyes and they envision downtown, they see skyscrapers and they imagine Fortune 500 companies, and people coming there for work. We have more people every day in downtown for purposes of choice versus work, and that's even on a weekday, right? So people are coming for parks, they're coming for restaurants, they're coming for theater, they're coming for ball games, right? They're coming for conventions, Comic Palooza. I think I heard you guys mention earlier. People come downtown now to the tune of 30 plus million a year. And you contrast that with work trips, which are about 20 million a year. So we've got about 3 visitors for every 2 employees in downtown, which is, pretty remarkable. Then you add on to that these other investments that we're making in what we would consider livability, like Main Street Promenade. That's creating a space specifically designed for people to be enjoyed at the scale of the human versus a car whizzing by at 45 miles an hour, as an example. And so we're creating these places just to create more interest and then also unique experiences that you can't find elsewhere around Houston.
Well, listening, let me just jump on the end of that there. Listening to what you're saying then, my initial thought is you want to bring people back into the offices because then they lift up the other businesses that are around downtown. But what you're saying is that we already have people coming in for those businesses downtown. Is there that acceleration because there are people back in offices?
Yes, it's both. Because at the end of the day, when we are looking at basically getting downtown back up and running to where we were pre-pandemic, we are looking at both visitation. So how are we in visitation? How are we on employment, right? And how are we on residential? All of the different contributors to downtown's overall vibrancy. We're measuring all of those things because they are all important. Particularly we talked about the service businesses that are in the tunnels. Those tunnels are generally only accessible by the downtown employment base, which creates a particular challenge for those businesses because if employment is low, right, there's fewer customers. And so that's also a part of this transition we're working on right now is talking about how we migrate away from a dependency on a tunnel network, particularly for retail and consumer goods. Because all of those things are then only accessible to one of those core audiences.
Which I do have a question about adaptive reuse of buildings.
Sure.
And that is something that a lot of Houstonians see, those old buildings that have been...
The Rice Hotel.
That have been let go. What is that gaining any traction? Are we going to be reinvesting in older buildings instead of just knocking them down?
Yes, and this has really been a part of the history of Houston for a long time, right? So you mentioned the Rice Hotel. Our redevelopment authority was established to create the financial tool to be able to make that project happen, repositioning it from a hotel into what was then just housing with affordable housing. And so we've been doing this kind of work for quite some time. Often when we think about adaptive reuse, it's within a historic property context. And so we've got some of those kind of projects that are underway right now, 2 hotels that are in transition from prior uses into hotel use, as well as, the big ones, which is the sort of the current conversation on this topic is around office conversions, right? So now when you have underperforming office assets, how can you reposition those to become something else? We have one of those projects that's been completed at 1600 Smith. It's now a residential property called Elevate, beautiful apartments that was done in a 1960s era office tower. And we've got another one that is just getting started right now at 1021 Main, which is another office to residential conversion.
We're speaking with Kris Larson, President and CEO of Downtown Houston Plus, and we're taking your calls and questions. It's 713-440-8870. Susan from Briar Forest is on the line. You want to pop on your headphones to hear Susan. Susan, what's on your mind?
I have thank you for taking this call. I have recently become aware of something called a municipal setting designation. It's about something happening within my neighborhood or within range of my house, my property, my home, and I'm trying to understand it. Came from a consultant, and I'm wondering if what all these accommodations to make Houston work better is if this municipal setting designation, which seems to be statewide, is related in some way to what you're talking about.
Susan, I don't believe it is related to what we're talking about, and I'm not sure that Kris is the right person to find that answer for us. But you know what? If you can give one of our producers your number, we'll reach out and try and find you an answer for that question.
It has to do with groundwater on the property and designated potable water. So no, it's not.
Okay.
Well, while we're talking statistics,
thank you, Susan.
What is the percentage of where we were as far as how many people, how much of the buildings were full, and where we are now, like pandemic versus now?
Yeah, so return to office, our latest data shows about 74%.
Of all those buildings are full.
So return to office is a little different than office occupancy, which is what you're asking about.
Yes.
So office occupancy is around the same range, high 70 percentile. And it's really, again, a tale of different product because the higher end product is outperforming Class B and Class C product. So when we think about tired, old, dumpy office space, right? The kind of thing that you might have seen a lot of in the 1980s and 90s. That kind of office product is not performing well, whereas the higher end is where we see that flight to quality. So even within the office sector, you see this tranching of different levels of performance. And so hopefully that answers your question. It's in the high 70 percentile.
What's
but most
the goal?
Where
do you want? 100%, I guess.
Yeah. Well, certainly the goal, particularly as it relates to being able to finance a future project, right, is you always want to have strong levels of leased occupancy because banks are going to look at the performance of those assets as a determination factor about whether or not they're going to loan to make that project work.
The nightmare we were all hearing during the pandemic of these big ghost town towers in downtown, and that's how it was going to be, and what are we going to do with all these big buildings, isn't being realized, right?
It's not being realized, and quite frankly, whenever we have challenges like this, it's easy to jump to those types of conclusions, right? But at the end of the day, real estate is a finite resource, right? And then what that does is it unlocks creative thinking, right? People start to imagine, well, what if it was used differently? What if it becomes something else? I mean, we transformed a dying old post office into a phenomenal food hall, right? Like, who saw that coming, right?
Yeah, right.
And Kris, speaking of transformation, our city is about to host in a year the World Cup, some of the games. What are y'all doing downtown to prepare for that?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of initiatives. You mentioned Main Street Promenade. So closing Main Street, 7 blocks of Main Street permanently to cars. We're building a protected pedestrian promenade, say that 3 times, that is going to be a great people space. And that's important for us because it's going to be a space that is designed for congregation of people. We're going to have fans from all across the globe, countries we don't even know yet, right, who are going to have independent and separate cultures, right, and really creating a place for all of those people to come together is very important for us because all of the hotel rooms in the Loop are in downtown. So a lot of folks, a lot of teams and others are going to be inside of downtown, and we want to make sure we create great experiences. We're also doing infrastructure improvements, a lot of cleaning and marketing efforts. So it's all about how we present Houston with our best foot forward.
And we just recently had the No Kings protest. How did our downtown fare compared to some of the other cities?
Phenomenally. So we had about 13,000 folks, according to our researcher, and our own ops team, said bluntly to me, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the fact that there were no problems, no vandalism. He's like, people even put their trash in trash cans.
Wow.
Right. So
Houston's a good
that's
city.
Houston for you.
So it's phenomenal.
Thank you for your leadership in there.
That's right. Kris Larson is the president and CEO of Downtown Houston Plus. Kris, thanks for joining us. You'll have to be back.
Thank you all. This is fun.
After the break, we'll discuss the importance of seaweed and the Gulf Coast ecology. Stay with us.
So pretty.
Fascinating things.
Houston Public Media is rooted in our community. We show up at school board meetings, city council votes, and neighborhood events.
That's how you stay informed about what's happening around you through deep local reporting that brings clarity and insight.
Your support powers this public service, so Greater Houston stays informed, connected, and safe.
Support local journalism right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org. Support comes from Galveston Historical Foundation, celebrating Juneteenth. As Juneteenth's birthplace, visitors can explore exhibits, tours, and events honoring the legacy of freedom all month long. More at galvestonhistory.org/Juneteenth 2025.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with the generous support from our founding sponsor, Kathy Sanders.
Support comes from Artec House with Rolling Stone Presents Amplified, the immersive rock experience, highlighting the history of rock and roll and featuring over 300 artists whose music changed the world. Tickets at artechhouse.com.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston System, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, we are back.
We are back.
Have you been to Galveston lately?
I have not.
There's a little seaweed on the beach. It happens.
Not just a little seaweed.
It doesn't always happen to Galveston. Sometimes it's Cancun. Can it get it
My
right?
parents were just in Tulum, and they said there was a lot of seaweed.
Yeah, a lot there, and then a lot of the Caribbean islands, Cayman.
Yeah.
There's a place called the Sargasso Sea, right?
Right.
And it's one of the only seas that doesn't have land borders. So it's basically, if you know where Bermuda is in the Atlantic, okay, it's basically this huge sea right there in the Atlantic, that the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Current, and then you have 4 different currents that kind of let this whole sea form, and then you get a lot of nutrients that come from agriculture, industrial, a lot of nitrogen, and so you get this seaweed forming there, right?
Stinky
Which is
seaweed.
good. Well, it's good for the environment. It's great. Little turtles can hide in it.
I was going to say, I always say how, I'm from South Texas, and my parents, we go to South Padre Island. That's where I grew up going to, spending spring breaks. And if you pick up the seaweed and you shake it, little shrimp sometimes come out.
Yes,
it's very
eels, turtles.
fascinating.
So we said, you know what? We love the seaweed, or we're going to try to. Dr. James Gibeaut is the endowed chair for coastal and marine geospatial sciences at the Hart Research Institute, and he's going to tell us all about it. James, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hello, thank you very much.
Well, look, we were just saying that actually ecologically the seaweed that we get all the way from the middle of the Atlantic that comes through the Caribbean, makes its way here. It's actually good for the environment as much as it might be unsightly.
Well, it has generally been considered good for the environment. And absolutely, when it's out to sea, it's a habitat. It's a floating habitat. And it's a macro brown algae called sargassum. And just like you were speaking of, small marine animals live within it. They take shelter in it, such as shrimp, specially adapted shrimp and fish and crabs, and they go for a ride.
But it's not great for them when it washes up on shore, is it?
Well, that's when it gets a little problematic for people in particular. And when it washes up on shore, and it has for many, many thousands of years, but if it comes on shore in such amounts that it becomes stranded on the beach, builds up and starts to decay, it starts to smell, and it interferes with tourism and other, human activities. And that's what we've seen happening in the Caribbean to a great extent recently. We have it here, of course, in Texas, and it's starting to come in now. And some years it's heavy, some years it's not so heavy. But it also plays an important role once it gets on the beach, particularly our beaches, type of beaches that we have, in that it helps hold the sediment in place. It dries out, it blows up against the dunes or is floated up against the dunes during high water times. And then it falls out, and then it creates these zones where the wind will blow across, and the sand will be caught there, and it's starting a dune. And so it's very important to the way the beaches form
now
on our coast.
Does it affect the beach whenever you see, some resorts will take a ply machine and they'll push the seaweed out of the way?
I think it's illegal to remove the seaweed because it's full of sand.
Well, and I've been in resorts in Mexico where they'll just totally ply all of that
Mexico's
seaweed
different.
away. Does that affect us here in Texas?
Well, when they do it, when we do it here in Texas, and yes, I've seen the same thing. In fact, we have a regular beach cleaning process that goes on all our coast here. I'm down here in the Corpus Christi in the coastal Bend area, and we're getting the sargassum in. And when it gets to a certain amount where people start to complain about it, then they'll come and they'll push the sand and the sargassum up against the dunes. And that changes the shape of the beach and changes how the beach works.
But they don't remove it. They don't remove it completely.
Right.
It's my understanding it's illegal to do that because it's illegal to remove sand from the beach, and it's full of sand.
Is that legal?
Right. That is those grooming operations are legal to a certain extent.
But not remove
But we used to be a lot more aggressive in that, and that changes the shape of the beach and how the beach can respond to storms and such. And so we try not to do that as much as days in the past, but then again, we haven't had a really heavy influx since about 2013 or 2014 or thereabouts.
What we're saying now, are we about done with it, or can we expect more seaweed all summer?
Is seaweed season over?
Yeah, no. You can expect to see some almost any time of the year, but when the water gets warm, the production of the seaweed, of the sargassum offshore increases, and the wind and currents shift, and we get
at the end of the day,
seaweed.
At the end of the day, seaweed's a good thing, right?
It's a good thing, right,
Yeah.
Dr. Gibeaut?
Yeah.
It
is overall a good thing.
That's right. Dr. James Gibeaut is the endowed chair for Coastal and Marine Geospatial Sciences at the Hart Research Institute at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. Dr. Gibeaut, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Sure, thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Central Market, celebrating summer with cookout-ready marinated meat and seafood, handmade in-house sausages and burgers, and chef-prepared sides. More at centralmarket.com.
We could see a thunder shower this afternoon. Currently, it is 90. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we'll talk with U.S. Representative Randee Weber, who will give us his response to the Trump administration's decision to strike 3 nuclear targets in Iran over the weekend. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also discuss one of the most ambitious and influential aging studies in the world, the 90-plus study, which gets out to explore the fastest-growing age group in the United States, those aged 90 and older.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll also speak with the executive director of the Southwest Alternate Media Project, or SWAMP, who will tell us about their 2-week Young Filmmakers Bootcamp.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. President Trump is scheduled to meet with his national security team at this hour. The White House is defending U.S. strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran Saturday. And now there are reports of explosions over the skies of Qatar. After the airspace there was closed, this comes amid fears over Iran's response to the U.S. strikes. Satellite imagery shows the aftermath. NPR's Jeff Brumfield reports it's unclear how much the bombings set back Iran's nuclear program.
American stealth bombers delivered bunker-busting weapons that penetrated the earth before exploding. The Pentagon says it's still evaluating, but it believes the bombs got through and destroyed 2 underground uranium enrichment sites. Jeffrey Lewis with the Middlebury Institute of International Studies has looked at satellite images after the strikes. He says it's hard to know if they worked.
What you see is actually very difficult to interpret because it's really just some holes.
Lewis also says trucks were spotted at 2 sites in the days before the strikes. He believes that Iran's stocks of highly enriched uranium were moved before the bombs hit. Jeff Brumfield, NPR News.
A heat wave is settling across the eastern U.S. High temperatures are expected to break many records over the next several days, a more frequent occurrence due to the planet warming. NPR's Amy Held says there's a push to create a federal standard to protect outdoor workers.
The Occupational Safety and Health Administration is holding public hearings on a proposal that would require employers to shield workers from the worst effects of heat, like with guaranteed water and shade breaks. Leticia Zavala is in favor. She has worked in the fields from a young age and now organizes on behalf of workers.
We have seen that recommendations that OSHA gives do not work if there is no enforcement afterwards. In North Carolina, we have not had a harvest without workers dying in the fields due to lack of medical attention, heat, accidents on the job.
In public comments, the Chamber of Commerce objected to the proposal, calling it a burdensome one-size-fits-all approach. Amy Held, NPR News.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott vetoed a bill to ban sales of virtually all hemp products containing THC, the psychoactive compound in cannabis. Houston Public Media's Andrew Schneider says Abbott is now calling a special legislative session on regulation.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the lead advocate for the ban, responded on social media by saying that Abbott had left the families who had seen their loved ones' lives destroyed by such products feeling abandoned. Abbott's veto leaves the state's multi-billion-dollar hemp industry intact for now. Patrick and others demanded the ban in large part because they alleged the industry was targeting minors. For NPR News, I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. 3 people were taken to the hospital after a police vehicle collided with a truck on the northeast side yesterday afternoon. Multiple outlets report that both officers and the driver of the truck were transported to the hospital with minor injuries. The Houston Police Department is looking into if alcohol played a role in what happened. And if you're looking to adopt a pet, now is the time. News 88.7's Tom Perumian tells us why.
The Bark Animal Shelter and Adoption Center has a special program going for Pride Month to help you find your perfect companion. Bark's Corey Stottlemyre tells us about it.
So all of our adoptions always come with the animal completely vaccinated, a microchip. They are registered, so you get 1 year free pet registration with the city. And then they are also all spayed and neutered. And for this month, you get all of that completely free.
That's right, all month long, all for free. Stottlemyre says the Adopt with Pride event is sponsored by District H Houston City Council member Mario Castillo, whose office is underwriting the month-long adoption drive. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Starting today, riders in the near North Side neighborhood of Houston will have access to on-demand transportation. The Community Connector is expanding its free service of an all-electric on-demand shuttle that people can request from their phones. Chelsea Trahan, the media manager at Metro, says their overall zone covers about 2.5 square miles.
We're trying to connect our community. We understand that the city is growing rapidly, and we have to find innovative ways to grow. And this has been a way to help people to not only get to our services, but to travel throughout the community.
Since launching the service last year, the Community Connector has had over 36,000 riders. The service extends to 3rd and 2nd wards, the Heights, and downtown. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR be the model for high-quality journalism in the 21st century. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
It is June 23rd, Monday, and we are back on Hello Houston.
Thank you for that. I never know the day of the week anymore, what date it is. So thank you for that.
Yes.
I have my mother's big Alzheimer's clock that has the day of the week, whether it's dawn, pre-dawn, night, everything about it. I love it.
We are also broadcasting live on YouTube, so if you want to watch and join in, a lot of our guests, they join us if they're not in studio. They come in on Zoom. If you're on the YouTube channel, you can see them there just as well. A lot to cover in today. Quickly, Frank, anything weather-wise you want to share with us?
You know, it's going to be pretty summer typical, 90, 92, feeling like 100. So just stay hydrated, be careful. And then those scattered afternoon thunderstorms pretty much every afternoon.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think it's a good thing.
It's a good thing?
Just be careful.
It's a Frank good thing. Coming up on the show, something that Frank will be extremely interested in since he just turned 65 yesterday. We're going to be looking at staying healthy and strong in old age.
You could use a lesson or two.
Maybe we can all use a lesson or two. The 90-plus study has been happening for about 40 years in California, and we have one of the researchers from that story to talk about the things we have learned that may not fall in line with what medical science, the establishment has seen, because their study has been very unique, working with people in nursing homes and nursing communities and senior citizen communities, and then following after death what they learned from examining their brains. It's a really fascinating study, and the only one of its kind that I have heard of or know about. So we'll be talking about that. In addition to that, something that some people would say slows aging or just slows everything you do, it's the ingestion of THC products. And a surprise turn of events there for the state of Texas. We were expecting legislation passed a ban on all of it for the state of Texas, went to the governor's desk. The governor vetoed it, which is an action in our state. If they leave it alone, it becomes law, or they can sign it into law. But the other choice is to actually veto it. And the governor did veto the ban.
You know, which is going against, it was it Cornyn that was very much against the hemp? Who was the one that wanted to
Lieutenant Governor.
Lieutenant Governor.
Dan
Patrick wanted to totally.
He wanted the ban.
All of it gone.
Well,
Dan Patrick, I apologize.
And Abbott's sending it back to lawmakers to sort of tighten it up.
Well, to regulate the industry, not outlaw the industry,
Right.
kind of along the lines that we do in some ways with alcohol. You know, you have to be a certain age to drink it. You have to be responsible when you use it and all of that kind of stuff. And so there will be a special session of our legislation.
It's all about money.
It's all about money. A lot of people were concerned. I'm curious, as we talk about this, whenever we talk about this topic, we get a lot of calls. If you have a point of view or a thought on it, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Abbott's veto comes 6 years after the legislature opened the door to a surge in hemp-based products when lawmakers, meaning to boost Texas agriculture, authorized the sale of consumable hemp. And it seemed to be successful in being in the marketplace.
It's got a lot less THC than actual marijuana.
Right.
Like even medicinal marijuana. But it has relaxing qualities, and I guess some people enjoy it. I don't. I've never done it. But.
Lieutenant Governor, in a May news conference, renewing his criticism of the industry, called THC-infused products such as gummies and beverages and vapes as a poison in our public. So
the idea that it leads to other things. So you get a little of this hemp, and then you're like, well, what's marijuana all about? And then you get that, and then it dominoes. So I don't know that there's any proof behind that.
Yep, this was a last-minute action just minutes before the veto deadline that keeps Texas's hemp industry alive for now. So as of right now, it's business as usual. And we'll see in July, I guess, the legislature is going to come together for a special segment and give their thoughts.
I bet this has really boosted, I bet people buying
it up
panic
and storing
buying
it.
and storing. This might have been great for business, right?
That's an interesting point. If you run one of these shops, give us a call. I'd love to know if you saw an increase in activity as it neared the ban.
Panic purchases of, I need 7 bottles.
Well, Frank and I have talked about bottles. Frank and I have talked about, especially when you use it medicinally for things like Alzheimer's and dementia, that it helps with appetite, it helps calm down patients, things like that. And that these gummies across the nation are seen as being used more regularly. Texas would have stepped outside. The governor was also concerned that if there was a constitutional legislation against the Texas ban, we would fail anyway because on the national level. So that's why he wants to
these things are really serious. You have to be very careful when you're ingesting things that you don't know. We were in Colorado going skiing. And my sister was like, she lives there, and I had a terrible crick in my neck, and I could not get rid of it. And she said, "Here, Celeste, let me rub a little CBD lotion on your neck." And I said, "Okay, great." So then my sister left. She would kill me if she heard me saying the story. And then my brother-in-law came out and said, "Yeah, let me give you a little CBD in your coffee." I mean, y'all.
They just drugged you out.
It was something.
It's like an
I tell
Love
you
Lucy
what.
plot, isn't it?
It'll be
really
interesting
was.
to follow this story and see how it goes and what the special session delivers. Remember, we're always interested in your thoughts and feelings on this topic. 713-440-8870. But at the top of the last hour, Celeste, you introduced a very serious topic for us.
Yes, thank you, Ernie. Today, U.S. officials say the strikes in Iran, which were carried out without congressional approval and without notifying top Democratic lawmakers, were intended to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. The United States' decision to intervene came a little over a week after Israel launched a series of strikes on Iran. U.S. officials say the American strikes devastated Iran's nuclear program, but independent experts analyzing satellite imagery say it is far from destroyed. Iran's Revolutionary Guards released a video overnight saying the U.S. will face consequences and ending with a message saying the U.S. can start this war, but we'll be the ones who end it. Joining us now is U.S. Representative Randee Weber, who covers Friendswood and Galveston. Earlier, you heard from Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher this morning on Houston Matters with the Democrats' response. Now, Representative Weber with the Republican response to this weekend's actions. Welcome to Hello Houston, Representative Weber.
Thank you, Celeste. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And if you have any questions for Representative Weber, now is the time to join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
Representative, as we are doing this right now, it's just coming to our attention that it seems as though Iran has had a counter-strike going on right now. What can you tell us about it? What do you know? What's happening?
6 missiles is what I saw. I just got off the plane just a while ago back in D.C. And here's some background that y'all would not know about me. We go on congressional delegations. We go overseas and we look at our facilities, whether it's military, and we deal with other government agencies, and we deal with other legislators, and we talk about trade and energy and those kinds of things. Since my 14th district has so many 7 ports more than anybody else, we talk about trade and we talk about energy. But in that particular time, I was over in Qatar, and we have an Air Force base over there, and they gave us classified briefing. And so we went through classified briefing. I'm not going to divulge anything, reveal anything that's in the classified briefing, but we got through, came out, and I asked the colonel, I said, look, we so much appreciate you guys. Y'all are right across the Hormuz Straits from Iran. Iran's had all this saber rattling going for a long time. And as you know, we've been paying attention a long time. And I said, if they were to launch missiles at you, Colonel, how much time would y'all have to react and to do something? And here's what he said, y'all. He said 4 minutes.
Wow.
That was earth-shaking for me. Yeah. Now, if Iran only launched, thank God, 6 missiles this time, then hopefully they could deal with those pretty perfunctorily and get those gone. But that's the kind of neighborhood, if you will, that they live in.
With those 6 missiles coming at us, does this change the level of what's going on between us and Iran right now?
I think what has to happen is, as you know, Iran is the world's #1 exporter of terrorism. End of story, period. Mm-hmm. And so if they continue to do these kinds of things, of course, I'm not the president. He has exercised his authority, as you know the background. They had 60 days worth of talks. And of course, you know that when Iran kept, twiddling their thumbs, so to speak, the 61st day, Israel opened up on them. You all know that Iran has basically said, even when I came into Congress in 2013, I think the Ayatollah Khomeini had said that Israel is a one-bomb nation. In other words, one nuclear bomb could destroy the whole nation of Israel. When somebody tells you they intend to kill you, and especially when they're the #1 exporter of terror, you need to sit up and take notice, take defensive measures, not only defensive measures, but you also need to be ready to retaliate and take that threat out. Especially remember that Iran has labeled the United States the great Satan and Israel the little Satan. Mm-hmm. And they are absolutely intent on killing us. And that's not a good place for us to be.
Representative Weber, but what can you tell us about the 6 missiles that were launched? What were they targeting, and what are you being told? What type of intelligence do we have?
Well, I can't tell. I just got off the plane and drove right to the office and got my computer set up. So I just saw the flash come across. Although when you're talking about missiles, flash might be the best word.
Right,
but
right.
I just saw that notification come across the screen.
From what I'm seeing, it's not just Qatar, but Bahrain and Kuwait also attacked here. To Ernie's point, to follow up there, where do we go from here? How much are we in a war? How do you define what we're in, and where do we go from that point?
Well, thanks for that question, Frank. And Frank, you still have a house down in Galveston?
I do, sir. And,
okay.
And I think I saw you. I think I saw you at the Admiral thing last September.
Yeah, right. Well, I was going to say we want to make sure you're still there and spending lots of money.
Oh yeah, as only I can, sir. So are we in a war, and where are we going?
Well, again, you go back to. It's in some fashion, and in fact, in a large fashion, it depends on what Iran is going to do. they're not playing nice in the neighborhood. There's a lot of pressure on them from around the world to do the right thing. If they keep fighting that and keep exporting terrorism, you know this probably. Some of the latest figures we've seen over the years is, I think it's 646 servicemen and women that Iran has killed. Of course, they have their proxies, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's Hamas, whether it's the Houthis. So there's a whole lot involved with this, not just the country of Iran. Of course, Yemen, the Houthis, they're threatening, Iran is. I don't know if y'all heard this. I was coming in on the plane and I was, trying to keep up with X. They were threatening to shut down the Hormuz Strait. And so we'll see what they do. And if they keep acting so aggressively in so many ways towards so many free nations, people, who love independence and who love governments that are set up for freedom, if they keep wanting to kill those people, kill those governments, kill those nations, if you will, I think Iran's going to rue the day that they went against President Trump.
Now, Representative Weber, I understand what's happening in Iran, but does this action go against what President Trump promised? Does this go against his America First approach?
Well, I know what you're talking about, Celeste. Thank you. Remember, he said a protracted war. He did not want to get us into like in Afghanistan, for example, 20-something years. He didn't want it to get us in a protracted war. I think with Iran, of course, the Afghanis, they didn't have nuclear weapons and they didn't have a lot of rhetoric out there. They wanted to kill, all the Jewish people in Israel, knock out the whole country. So I think it's a little bit of a different level. And I think the president has got good advice from his advisors. I know there's been I heard y'all earlier, I don't remember if it was Frank or who it was, saying that there was some independent folks saying that it didn't look like that much damage was done with the Moabs, the bunk busters, if you will. And so I think you're going to see President Trump take a very reasoned, thoughtful approach as to how they respond, and then if need be, how we respond to them.
We are speaking with U.S. Representative Randee Weber right now. If you have questions, thoughts on this topic, and want to share, 713-440-8870. Representative, listening to what you're saying from the news that's coming in, 6 missile strikes here earlier today, if I understood correctly, the attack on Israel was singular missiles shot at different points to kind of rattle the nation of Israel. What I'm wondering is, are we seeing a depleting of Iranian war apparatus? Are they low on missiles? That's why we're seeing limited numbers coming out. Are they depleted at this point since the barrage has been going on?
Ernie, is that you? I'm having trouble seeing your picture.
Yeah, it's me. It's Ernie.
All right, good. No, good. Thank you for that. Look, here's what a lot of people don't know about the way the Israelis work. Because Iran has been trying to take them out for a long time. Hezbollah was on the north border, literally about half a mile from the north border. Of course, Hamas had tunnels built underground from Egypt into the West Bank for a long time. The Israelis go so far out of their way to avoid civilian casualties, they have what's called a knock-knock bomb. And what that means, there's 2 ways they do this. They will drop a knock-knock bomb on the top of a building that just goes along, boom, doesn't explode or anything. It just makes a big thud. Something got hit. They knew something got hit. And then they also drop leaflets that say, because what the terrorists were doing, they were holding up in hospitals. Everything above ground looked like, it was doctors, nurses, patients, and everything. And they kind of dared the Israelis to hit that hospital. The Iranians have no qualms about bombing hospitals and houses and neighborhoods in Israel. You know about the Iron Dome. You know that they have sent literally anywhere from 20 to 30 missiles a day, sometimes to 100 in a week or more. And so Israel is very intent on no civilian casualties. Iranians, not so much. Back to your second part of the question, is there inventory of armaments reducing? You know what I mean? Probably. They sent a lot of drones out. As you know, what was it, 300 drones against Israel, 6 or 7 months ago? And
but
so
some of the talk then was that those drones were pretty much somewhat outdated too, that their military advancement might not be fully there.
Right. Well, and that's a great point. You're making a great point, really. For one reason, that is, if they can't keep up with Israel, if the nations they're threatening, if they don't have the firepower, if they don't have the ammunition, if they don't have the capability, then you would think they would back off a little bit. So it's kind of puzzling. And I know that President Trump, I think his group called a meeting this afternoon. In fact, I think it was at 1:00. They got to be watching this with a great degree of interest, because it looks like Iran has been set back on their heels quite a bit, just my estimation.
You're listening to Hello Houston. We are speaking with U.S. Representative Randee Weber. You can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. We did have an off-air comment from a caller. Liz from Southwest says, it seems Israel keeps getting entangled with a lot of its neighbors. Is it possible an alliance with Israel could be a liability for the U.S.?
No.
It's a good answer.
Okay, there we go. And again, you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
Another question that keeps coming up is regime change, whether or not that's what we want. We had a caller earlier today saying that the only way that things can get in order over there is with a regime change. I have had the privilege of being in the presence of the Crown Prince, the Shah of Iran's son, who is here in the U.S., who has been looking for that to happen too. Is that the direction that this has to go for this to all settle down, or is there a way to work with the regime that's currently in power in Iran to settle the situation, from your point of view?
Well, that's loaded. That's a whole bunch of information to try to discuss in that part. Whether the Crown Prince will be the one remains to be seen. There have been quite a number of Iranians here in Washington, D.C. As y'all probably know, Miriam Rajavi, who is a lady from Iran, has been leading the resistance, if you will. They've had meetings in Paris. I've actually been to several of them, not in Paris, but here in the Rayburn Building in the House side. Will there be enough Iranian citizens to rise up? Yeah, regime change, absolutely. The Shah, Ayatollah Khomeini has got to go. I know he's 86 years old. I mean, gosh, how much longer can he last? We'll see. But he needs to go, and maybe this is a good analogy or maybe not, just like Hitler had to go. Boy, they should have got rid of Hitler a long time ago. And here's a guy, y'all know this, women have little, if any, rights over in Iran. Man, they're treated like a chattel or cattle or, property. And so I think it's going to have to be a regime change.
Do you have any concern about sleeper cells coming alive here in America? There's been that threat.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. I'll tell you what I'm most, was that you, Frank?
Yes, sir.
I'll tell you what I'm most concerned about is you've seen this in the last several years. Haven't seen it maybe in the last year. These radicalized Islamists that have gotten radicalized, and they drive a car or a truck onto a sidewalk and killed 10, 20 people. I'm very concerned about that.
Mm-hmm. I guess one of the questions that people are wondering about back and forth was the okay for the president to go in and do this strike. And as a sitting member, what are your thoughts and feelings on how he handled this? And can you get congressional approval when things need to be kept so close to the vest?
Well, the problem with that is congressional approval takes a long time. And our friends across, I don't know if you saw Hakeem Jeffries, post about him, said he broke the law. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I've read it several times. I know a little bit about the Constitution. The president, commander-in-chief, has that term for a reason. He has to, or she, and going forward, no matter, I don't want to, whichever we have in the White House at the time, has to be able to make a decision. Did I mention that the 6 missiles coming over to Qatar, they had about 4 minutes to respond?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The commander-in-chief has to be able to make decisions like that right now. I know maybe when I forget what the law is called, was written, that back in those days, we didn't have the kind of technology. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have a lot of the stuff maybe that we've got now. And when you see someone like Iran, as I said earlier, who vows to kill you and wipe you off the face of the earth, and then is on the edge of getting the most deadly weapon known to mankind, I think the president needs to be able to act quickly.
Sir, did you find out about this when we all did? Late Saturday night. Did the members of Congress get any indication that this attack was going to happen, or did you just find out on the news like we did?
Yeah, I didn't, Frank, find out. We didn't get an advance notice. Now, I would have to imagine that some committees, the Armed Services committees, probably got a briefing before the attack happened. But of course, then we saw the news everywhere.
Yeah. We have a call. Lewis from the medical center has been holding to ask you something. Lewis, are you there?
Lewis, you on the line?
Yes.
Okay, what's your question for the congressman?
Yes, thank you for putting me on. So, Representative Webb, my question is, why does Congress not do anything? Because the act of power of war, to declare war, is in Congress, in the Constitution. Why is Congress not getting that power? That's my question.
Okay, I think it's been asked and answered, but you want to give him a brief answer there, sir?
Yeah, well, thanks, Lewis. I'm glad you're in the Texas Medical Center. You know, Texas is known for having the Texas Medical Center, the best in the world. And of course, I'll put in the plug for UTMB. We've got them down in Galveston, and they're one of the best hospitals around. Memorial Hermann's good too. We've got some great hospitals, great service in Texas. So I'm glad you're listening, Lewis. There is the War Powers Act, is what it's called. I finally got it pulled back up in my little tiny pea brain. It was the one I was referring to, but I go back again to what I said earlier. The president has to be able to make split-second decisions. And when you're talking about 435 members of Congress trying to get them all in the same room to vote for something that literally could take a day or two, and we don't have that kind of time, especially when you've got madmen like Ayatollah Khomeini and the Iranians who have vowed to kill everybody, have been working day and night overtime to get, the nuclear bomb. And he has literally said, I said this earlier, Lewis, I don't know if you were listening, that Israel is a one-bomb nation. There's about 9 million people in Israel, and it's the most democratic country you're going to see. They've got all kinds of people. They got Muslims, they have Jewish people, they have all kinds of different people that are in their Knesset, their governing body. And so when somebody says they want to take out Israel with one bomb, all 9 million people, believe them. You've got to be able to make quick decisions.
Representative, if I'm not mistaken, the War Powers Resolution does not forbid a strike, just continued attacks past the 60-day limit. To continue military operations beyond the 60-day limit, the president needs congressional approval, such as a declaration of war or a special authorized use of military force.
Representative,
well, thank you for that, Ernie. I sure appreciate that, because I was trying to remember, was that year, was that 90? What year was that passed?
Now you're going beyond my knowledge base. You got me that far.
Representative,
it's above your pay grade. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weber, if it turns out that the uranium was removed from the facilities, will we be performing additional attacks?
If it turns out that the uranium was
removed from the facilities that we were trying to that we sent missiles to.
Do y'all remember the JCPOA under President Obama?
No.
The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, where we talked about about the nuclear stuff, and that they were supposed to let the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, come in. One of the things I didn't like about it, Celeste, I'm going to get to your question. One of the things I didn't like about that was that they wouldn't let any Americans in. You had to give 48-hour notice to go and take a look at their facility. Well, come on, boys and girls. You don't have to be very smart to figure this out. They're going to hide as much as they can. Will we be able to get in there now and see if they've got uranium? Will they have been able to hide that uranium somewhere? You can bet, this is an old laughing phrase, you can bet your sweet bippy they're going to hide that uranium, and we would never know where it is.
Well, it makes you wonder if President Trump saying, I'll make a decision in 2 weeks, and then making a decision in 3 days was intentional.
I think it was, Frank. Actually, I appreciate what Ernie said earlier about the 61 days. You know that Israel attacked on the 61st day at the end of the 60 days because I think they figured out the Iranians were playing. They were playing chess. They were calling our bluff, if you will. And President Trump, as you know, he's a horse trader. He's a deal maker. He's used to arguing these kind of high-level deals. And if he said 2 weeks all the time thinking that, by golly, I'm not sure I want to give him 2 weeks, if they don't act within a day or two after the deadline expires, shame on them.
U.S. Representative Randee Weber, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. We hope to have you back as there's more developments.
Thank you, Celeste. We want you to come down to Galveston, too, and spend lots of money.
I'm noticing a theme in this interview.
Here. Yeah. Coming up on Hello Houston, we're diving into one of the most ambitious and influential aging studies in the world, the 90-plus study. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
It's more important than ever to stay informed. That's why Houston Public Media delivers well-researched news that's free for everyone.
And right now, your support helps make sure it stays that way. No subscription, no paywall, just news that's here when you need it.
Give today to keep yourself and your community informed, no matter what the future holds.
Make your donation now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
This month, the House voted to rescind $1.1 billion in federal funding for NPR and PBS. For some stations, the loss of this money would be dire. We discuss the stations that might not survive as a result of these cuts and what it means for the future of public service and local news. That's next time on 1A.
You can hear 1A coming up this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Houston Matters is your essential daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston.
These counties have been growing a lot.
I think what has been holding us back is the fact that for 2 legislative sessions, schools didn't really get an increase in funding.
If the storm surge comes up the ship channel, that's a nightmare.
There's an acceptance at cons that you don't get elsewhere. No judgment, and it's beautiful.
I'm Craig Cohen. Join us for the next Houston Matters, weekday mornings at 9 here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Baylor College of Medicine, creating tomorrow's medicine today. Known for their medical research and innovation, Baylor College of Medicine is a proud sponsor of Houston Matters with Craig Cohen, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on News 88.7. Support comes from Artec House with Rolling Stone Presents Amplified, the immersive rock experience, highlighting the history of rock and roll and featuring over 300 artists whose music changed the world. Tickets at artechhouse.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
With Frank recently celebrating a birthday.
Yeah, like
recently
yesterday.
As yesterday. We decided today that we would dive into one of the most ambitious and influential aging studies in the world, the 90-plus study. It was launched in 2003. The 90-plus study set out to explore the fastest growing age group in the United States, those aged 90 and older. With over 1,600 participants, many of whom were originally part of a 1980s era survey of residents in a Southern California retirement community, this long-running study has helped scientists ask a vital question. What does it take to not just live longer, but to live better? To tell us more about the study, we welcome Dr. Claudia Kawas. She is a retired professor of neurobiology and behavior at the School of Biological Science at UC Irvine and a head researcher for the 90-plus study. I had the privilege of talking to her before on another one of our shows, and I am thrilled to have her back with us today. Hello there, Dr. Kawas.
Hello.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me back. And first of all, belated happy birthday, Frank.
Thank you so much. And saying that, I really appreciate that. The fastest growing age group is 90 plus. Compared to what? That just doesn't seem right. So
it almost doesn't really matter if you compare it to anybody below the age of 90. They're faster growing than the 80 to 90-year-olds, faster growing than the 70 to 80-year-olds. I mean, part of that is that people rarely lived to be in their 90s or 100 before. I mean, in 1900, life expectancy was 49 years for women and 47 years for men. And we've added a lot to life expectancy. And now we have a population of individuals who we never really had before. You know, in the old days, the President of the United States would handwrite a birthday card to every centenarian in the United States. That could happen now.
That took 20 minutes, right?
The part of the study that fascinates me the most is when we get into dementia and Alzheimer's, and what you folks realized or started to realize by having this unique group of people you could study. Unlike most of the time where after death, then they looked at the brains and determined whether someone had Alzheimer's or dementia or not. But your study could look at them while they were still alive and then examine those brains. And you found some, I don't know if it's conflicting evidence or a different approach to it than simply tangles and plaques being the cause.
Absolutely. I think the most significant finding, as an umbrella finding that we realize now, is that it's not all Alzheimer's disease. That, in fact, there are really a remarkable number and variety of things that are related to dementia. And as we get older, you have more and more of those. So on average, 70% of all of the individuals who died, and let us look at their brains so far, 70% of them had not one, not two, but three or more dementia-related pathologies.
But they themselves weren't, a lot of them were not living with dementia in their later years.
And that's absolutely the most important thing to notice, too. We have always, mostly looked at the brains of people who have bad thinking or dementia. And just to get our terms straight, by dementia, I mean a loss of cognitive abilities of sufficient severity to make it difficult to do your activities. And it usually involves memory, but it has to also involve other things like language or calculations. And dementia, the difference I'm asked between that and Alzheimer's disease, well, dementia is a syndrome. It's like a headache. And it can be caused by more than 100 different things, of which Alzheimer's disease is one.
So how do we live our best life then? Because you're suggesting.
Well, I don't want to be trite, but I mean, for starters, we need a lot more research into the other contributing causes of dementia in this age group. So I don't think very many people, if any, on this podcast will have heard the term late. But I think they're going to be hearing that in coming years. It was a recently defined pathologic cause of dementia. It's highly associated with aging, and it turns out and associated with a very different protein than amyloids and tangles, which are what's in Alzheimer's disease. It's associated with TDP. And it turns out it accounts for almost as much dementia as Alzheimer's disease in our 90-year-olds.
Well, I always hear exercise, keep that up.
That's what I was going to ask.
Get
Dr.
away from
Kawas,
alcohol.
when looking at 90-plus-year-olds, when you're looking at how important is lifestyle when you're in your 70s and your 80s, what do you recommend people to do? You examined this large group of people. So what do you recommend that we do to be living our best life in our 90s?
Well, I'm not. I can tell you what we found in the study, which is that the first thing we looked at is we had 14,000 people on whom we had some lifestyle information, whether or not they took vitamins, how much they exercised, whether or not the women took estrogen. And that was all obtained in the early 80s when these individuals were on average 72 years old. And we took a look at all those lifestyle factors. We thought maybe that individuals, for example, who took vitamin E and C and A might live longer than individuals their same age who didn't. And that wasn't related to living longer. Okay. We looked at all sorts of things, calcium, green tea, colas, none of which was related to longevity. The one thing that came glaring out, exercise.
Exercise.
As little as 15 minutes a day was associated with longer life. 30 minutes was better. 45 minutes was the best. And fortunately for couch potatoes, anything above 45 minutes didn't seem to add too much.
Oh, good.
Wow.
Good to know.
So 45 minutes. Now, was there anything when you're looking at exercise? I want to take it even more one step further in. Was it a type of exercise? Is walking 45 minutes a day enough? Should people be hitting their 10,000 steps? Or is weightlifting?
or
You hear a lot
aerobic
about weightlifting.
Swimming.
So we had limited data, from what was people collected back in the 80s when they had less interest in it. So, I mean, I don't think you should take this as definitive, but we were able to find the effect basically with any and all put together. It didn't have to be highly intensely aerobic, for example. It didn't have to be running 45 minutes. We added the times together. So if they reported 15 minutes of walking and 15 minutes of doing some kind of exercises and 15 minutes of gardening. We added all that time together. So it didn't have to be contiguous either. I think it mostly is using your body.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more important it becomes.
Something that I took away from our last conversation and all this is people want to point to different factors, drinking alcohol or not drinking alcohol, listening to music, not listening to music. And what I took away from it overall was that it was the people that remained socially engaged more so than what these individual behaviors were led to longevity and more and less cognitive decline. If they were engaged in life, if they saw people and interacted, that was, am I taking the right thing from this study?
You absolutely are. I mean, for starters, when we looked at longevity, we also looked at non-exercise activities. Once again, lumping them all together. For every hour that somebody spent engaged in an activity, many of which, not all of which, were socially active, some of which were cognitively active, but for every hour, we found a longevity advantage, and we took that out to 8 hours a day. So I think that even the alcohol effect that we and many individuals have found in studies is probably confounded, at least in part, by the social engagement that often goes along with alcohol intake. So we found an association with alcohol intake, but you only had to do it a couple of times a month.
So let me ask you this. The 45 minutes of exercise would help keep your weight down. But saying that, did obesity play a part in longevity? Because we are an obese nation.
Well, now we have GLP-1s.
So,
well, I do. What about you?
Yes, doctor.
Absolutely. Obesity is not good for longevity.
Right.
So we even took a look at individuals who had been obese in the study at age 21, but had since lost the weight, and they had excess mortality. So it's never good to be obese. Having said that, what we found, and really many, many studies have found, is that as you age, it is important to maintain or even gain a little weight. So individuals in their 90s who are classified as overweight by their BMI actually have no reduction in mortality compared to individuals who are normal weight.
And lift some weight.
Advantage.
We're talking plump, not obese, correct?
Yeah, and keep in mind, think about how we calculate this, which is basically a BMI is a calculation based on height and weight. And as you age and you lose height, and especially, 95-year-old women have lost a lot of height, then staying the same weight technically makes your BMI go up. So I think what's bad is weight loss. And underweight individuals in their 90 had the highest mortality rate by far.
Wow. Last thing before we let you go quickly, I'm curious if people are already experiencing these reduced cognitive behaviors. They've entered into dementia and Alzheimer's. Are there things that your study shows that can start to at least slow it or bring us back some, or is the ship has sailed?
No, I think that one of the main things we've realized is that healthy lifestyle matters at all levels. It matters when you're young. It matters even more maybe when you're older. And certainly it doesn't stop mattering when you have cognitive problems. So continuing to engage and do exercise and eat healthily and enjoy social and other relationships.
You've given me hope. Thank you.
Dr. Kawas, I cannot wait till we get to speak again. Always a joy.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Dr. Claudia Kawas is a retired professor in neurobiology and behavior at the School of Biological Sciences at UC Irvine and head of researcher for the 90-plus study. Dr. Kawas, again, thanks for joining us. After the break, we'll talk about the local film scene. Stay with us.
This spring, a huge algal bloom off the coast of California produced a toxin that would end up sickening thousands of marine mammals.
Most of our facilities have done what they would do in a year in the first 3 months of this year.
I'm Elsa Chang. How scientists are helping some of these animals heal while preparing for another outbreak on All Things Considered from NPR News.
You can hear it this afternoon starting at 3 o'clock.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe, R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul, music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
Support comes from Asia Society Texas, featuring Hung Shen, Between Worlds, and Explore Asia. Exhibitions offering an interactive and educational experience for the whole family. More at asiasociety.org/Texas. Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer.
Support comes from GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
Support comes from SunnyPro, a Houston-based business advisory firm providing consulting solutions, specializing in mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and valuations for exit planning. Details at sunnypro.com or follow at SunnyPro LLC.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
The Southwest Alternate Media Project, or SWAMP, is a Texas-based media arts organization committed to supporting independent filmmakers as well as nurturing a vibrant creative community. In partnership with Houston Cinema Arts Society and River Oaks Theater, SWAMP presents a showcase of films made by Houston area filmmakers on the third Wednesday of every month. To tell us more about that and their 2-week Young Filmmaker Bootcamp, which begins today, June 23rd, are Randee Ramsey, the executive director of SWAMP, and Gordon Williams, a board member of SWAMP. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks for having us. And actually, we just had our filmmaker showcase at River Oaks last Wednesday. Wow. And Gordon programmed probably the best showcase we've had so far. And they've been pretty good, guys.
Okay, then
fantastic.
Gordon, the question's got to be, what did you bring? What was the special sauce that made this the best one?
I just believe it's all about giving filmmakers opportunities. And with the content that the filmmakers created, wanted to curate a program that made the audience feel emotions. And that was a part of the plan in bringing that to life.
Tell me about filmmakers today, young people, because do they just take their iPhone and make a film, and or do they really use a camera like the old days with silver iodide?
I mean, it really depends upon the kid, but I will tell you, so this morning we introduced our new group of young filmmakers into our boot camp. We call it boot camp on purpose because in 2 weeks, these kids come up with a story. They work as a writer's room. They write it, prep it, shoot it, and post it in 2 weeks. And it's the 4th year in a row that we've done it this style. Wow. And this year we're down at Houston Media Source for session 1. And our next session, session 2, the first year we're doing 2 sessions, starts July 7th at 6 Foot Media, who has graciously donated their space to us.
Nice.
That's fabulous.
So it's super exciting. But these kids, I asked, what's your favorite movie? And they blew me away. One of them was like, Shawshank Redemption. And I'm like, you're 14. Another one brought up Night of the Living Dead. I'm like, who are these kids? And they love it. They're real filmmakers. So yeah, there's content creators, and we teach them how to tell a story with just their phone, but we also give them a Sony Venice and a full professional crew to support them, and they will do all of it. And it's so exciting.
To jump on Frank's question, though, because of this technology is in all of our hands now and such, have you seen a difference in the students that come in initially? Are they better today than maybe amateur filmmakers 10, 15, 20 years ago? Does this new group have a new way of approaching them?
I think they have different stories to tell. And I think they have an expectation of more immediacy. And my favorite thing about them is that they're fearless.
Yeah.
And they're also honest. Yeah. And in the past 4 years, they have done stories, the stories they've chosen to tell. One was a period piece set in the Rio Grande Valley of an abused wife escaping her husband. One was set in 1938 Rotterdam, and it was a spy double crossed with a Jewish double agent. I mean, one was set in the 1800s and dealt with race. These kids are fearless, and they're deep, and they're thinking, and I am amazed by them every single day.
Where do they come from? Are these college
what is the
kids?
criteria?
No, they are 12 to 17 years old.
Wow.
They come from across the city, and they are storytellers, and they represent Houston's enormous diversity, which I think is our greatest superpower, is the diversity.
Dig too deep into all of this, though, for listeners who want to send their kids or kids that are listening that want to come to this, how do they get involved in the program?
You go to swamp.org, and our Young Filmmaker Bootcamp is right there on our website. You can have zero experience. You can be the rock star of your high school program. We had one kid last year who was like, I love films, loves all these incredibly random films. And then he got 3 days into it. And you know what I've discovered? He said, filmmaking is tedious.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Take 36.
Yeah, I went into school, into college at Loyola to be a filmmaker, and what I learned was it was so much easier just to talk on the radio. You didn't have to lug all that equipment and all that work and the crews and all that. Made it much easier. Also, the other side of it is that we look at our rich talent. We used to have a show here on the air called The Territory where we looked at local films and we aired them on the air. And I guess that's continuing in the way the showcases are put together and what you're finding and what you're sharing.
Yes, it's all about giving filmmakers an opportunity to display their work, but also in doing that, you're inspiring other people who want to be a part of this industry. So this is why it's important for Swamp to do the work that they do.
Do you have a time limit? Like your film can only be 12 minutes or 30 minutes? Or?
We try to keep them under 10, but we have had some submissions that were very good at 14, 15. So we'll work with the filmmaker to make it happen. And that's the best part. I mean, Swamp is local, but our board is all media professionals. They're all people who mentor and teach. And we're really focused on that. We're about to enter our 50th year.
Wow.
So we're 48 years old. As we get to March of 2026, we'll be starting our 50th year of service, and we'll culminate in a 50th anniversary in 2027.
How many kids this year?
So this year we'll have about 40.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Between 2 sessions, but 3 of the folks that we have working at the camp are alumni from the program. One is attending Chapman, one is in Chicago, one is at NYU. And they come back home and they call me and say, hey, can I come and be a TA this year? And I'm like,
absolutely.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you.
What's the significance from Swamp's point of view, and it's pretty much a platform for you to share your view, on the importance of having local voices heard in cinema?
I think it's the most important thing, and we have done well lately. Let me just tell you, I think that there's a lot of things going in our favor. Nell Tier just did Bolivar. She's coming to speak at the Houston Media Conference in August. We've confirmed her. Charlie Bird, all shot in and around Houston, just recently won the Tribeca Film Festival. Wow. We've had some really good showings. Courtney... I've always messed up his name, but Color Book, which was produced by a local filmmaker, is doing really well on the circuit. So I think the quality of work is coming out, and I think the new incentives will help. I think having the media conference, we're entering our 3rd year. Having the education and the advocacy that we've put in place is really important. And yeah, we are the most diverse city in America. We have stories to tell, and focusing on those local stories, I think, helps the whole city, not just filmmakers.
Randee Ramsey is the executive director of the Southwest Alternate Media Project. Gordon Williams is a board member of SWAMP. Randee and Gordon, thank you both for joining us today on Hello Houston. The first session of SWAMP's Young Filmmaker Bootcamp begins today, June 23rd, and runs through July 3rd. The second session will be from July 7th through the 18th. And that brings us to the end of our show.
Goodbye, Monday.
Goodbye, Monday. We want to thank you for listening, calling, and engaging with us today on Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more news and more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Children's Museum of Houston, presenting Faithful Friends, an exhibit exploring understanding and friendship, where kids discover that while faiths and beliefs may differ, kindness and friendship are universal.